Hi, welcome to the Rio Knits podcast. My name is Rhiannon and I'm a knitter and now crocheter living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my wife and cat. I am coming to you from through the sands of time because I have no idea when this will actually go up. It is mid-late September and the weather has we've gone through the first false fall and now we're maybe in the second false autumn. I don't know. What I do know is that autumn in Wisconsin is fantastic, chef's kiss. Yeah, and it lasts a really long time, which makes it even better. So we'll be seeing the temperatures gradually dropping for at least the next 2-3 months. So very excited. I am wearing my newly finished Ranunculus. You might be able to tell that I haven't blocked it. I simply finished knitting it and then set it aside and haven't dealt with it. But I thought I would just show it to you here. So this is a pattern that so many people have made. It's been around for many years. And it's one of those that kind of has evergreen popularity. And I never thought I would make one. I never, really saw what other people were seeing in it, I guess, which is, that might not sound nice. And I don't mean that in a critical way. To me, it was just it's like it's a lace yoke and some other stuff. But I had this yarn in my stash for a really long time and just kind of wanted to use it. And I also thought, I don't really have anything like this. And when I realized that I could make something out of this yarn, I decided to go ahead and do it. Let me rephrase that. When I realized I could make a ranunculus, which is a garment out of this, because I thought I would make a shawl or something like that. But I thought, I could actually use a light blue sweater and it'll be really cropped. And so here it is in all its glory. As you can see, I made a bracelet length sleeve and I did knit it straight all the way down to the cuff and then did a rapid decrease. It's not super dramatic because it's a pretty close fitting sleeve to begin with. It's not a roomy sleeve, but I think it has a really pretty look to it. And I think this is a really cute sweater. So I'm going to stand up and try to give you a view of the whole thing. It is really cropped and I'm wearing it with a dress because this is how I plan on wearing it. So you can see that maybe you can't see. This is right about at my natural waist. And so the sweater, I don't think I did any decreases before I did the ribbing, but it kind of looks like it just because there's a little bit of poofiness, but I think that's just due to it being really short. But I think it's very cute and fits nicely. And I think the thickness of the yarn, because I did a worsted weight and I actually knit it at a tighter gauge than what the pattern suggested. So I had to fiddle around with what size I was going to do. There's no way I could get the gauge that was recommended in the pattern without using needles that are so big that my hands would hurt. And I'm just not willing to do that. So I used the recommended size 10 needles and my gauge was different. Those did actually kind of hurt my hands. I'm a little, we'll get into another project I'm working on that I'm a little nervous about because it's on size 9s and I find that to be a little uncomfortable, but whatever. My only complaint about this pattern or this sweater is that I opted to do the short row shaping that raises the front neck. I don't think that's necessary. I don't really know why it's in there. I've never seen a pattern do that before. Usually you have the back neck raised and this one does do that, but then it also has you raise the front neck so you can see that there's more space between the ribbing and the lace work right here. And I guess that just makes the collar come up closer on your neck, so maybe it's warmer. I'm not sure what that does. If anybody understands the physics of this garment better than me, like let me know in the comments. But I think that's my only complaint. And then, the yoke, I think it's pretty. It's a lace yoke, and it's comfortable. But it is a little warm right now, so I'm gonna change into something else. I just wanted to show you my newest finished object. All right, so now I'm wearing the Lotus tee, which is something I knit earlier this year. It is also a lace yoke. It has short sleeves. I like that these sleeves are not super short, and I'll tell you a little bit about it because I don't think I've shared it on here before. This spring I went to YarnCon in Chicago, which has become a tradition for me since I moved here. I bought this yarn from the booth that I always spend my money at, which is Jems Luxe Fibers. Their yarns are so pretty. They always have something. They always have something that I feel like just calls my name, even though I'm not like a big superwash hand-dyed yarn girly. Like I feel like they just draw me in somehow. So this year I was with two friends who were shopping for wool cotton blends, and I thought, I'll look for a wool cotton blend too, because I think it would be nice to have something for, I want to knit more kind of in between layering pieces, things I can wear when it's cold in the morning and then warm in the afternoon and then cold at night, and so I got this yarn. The color was stunning. And really I have nothing but good things to say about the pattern and the yarn. If I was to do it again in hindsight, I think I would go down a size. I think I chose a size based on this idea I had that I'm gonna primarily wear this with pants, and so I wanted it to be like a little looser. When I make something to wear with like a dress, like layered over a dress or with a skirt, I usually make it cropped. I usually make it more fitted. And then when I think about wearing it with like jeans, like this is something I normally would wear with jeans. I want, more of like a longer, looser fit. And that's the same whether it's summer or winter clothes. I just think those are two silhouettes I like. I think the silhouette with like a full skirt and like a very fitted top is cute to me. And then the silhouette with like a long, like drapey, tunicky, cozy top, and then jeans, which I never wear like very big baggy jeans or anything. So they're usually like straight leg, so I think it's a good fit for jeans, but I think I would make another one of this that was for skirts. So as you can see, they're almost the same color, and I think that's pretty funny. So I've made two things that are this sort of light blue, sky blue. This year, this one has a much more of a purple tint, which isn't really showing on the camera, and this one is more of just like a traditional sky blue. I feel like they're both coming out more gray, but sometimes that's what I see in the camera, and then once I rewatch the video when I'm editing, it looks exactly the way it looks in real life, so I'm not going to stress about it. But yeah, this is Jems Luxe Fibers. It's whatever their wool cotton fingering weight blend is, and it is the color Aquamarine. This is just some yarn that I dyed myself with one of those like powdered indigo kits from Mywa, something like that. There's like a website where you can buy a lot of dyes and try things out, like natural dyes. So yeah. So now that I've shared two finished projects with you, I'd like to talk about what I am currently knitting and what I'll be knitting next-ish. So last time I recorded, I talked about my pearl sweater. I said the wrong designer, so if you were looking for it, I'm sorry. I think I linked it in the description, so hopefully you got the right information. But this is by Sanne Fjalland Knit-Wear, and it is this really pretty, simple compound yoke raglan situation with these little eyelets that become more frequent as you move down the body of the sweater. I am down here on the ribbing, and this ribbing is gonna take me forever because it is on a size, pause, drum roll please, 1.5 needle. This is the size of needle that I make socks with usually. I think I use a 1 or a 1.5, but it is so tiny, and I am doing 2x2 rib. I think, I will say, thank God it's 2x2, because if it was 1x1, I might like throw a fit. I don't know. It is just really, really kind of a tedious one. And it's, you know, my goal was initially that I would work on this and the Ranunculus in tandem, because they both are a yoke with a compound raglan, and then, you know, pretty much standard, you know, you put your sleeves on hold, you knit your body, you pick up your sleeves one at a time, you work on the sleeves. Nothing really intense about either of them, but my wrist is feeling it, my left wrist, which is it's the hand I hold my knitting with. Like, I actually am holding the project in this hand. I am an English style knitter, so I use my right hand for tensioning and like wrapping the yarn. But my left hand is what's keeping the project from falling on the ground. So when I have to use really big or really small needles, my wrist tends to hurt, and it is hurting like heck right now because the Ranunculus was on size 10 needles, which is out of my comfort zone. I would say my knitting needle comfort zone is really anything between a 4 and an 8. 8 is kind of pushing it these days. I usually knit things, you know, like a size 4, 5, 6. I think 5 is my absolute favorite knitting needle size, not that anyone cares, but doing this entire sweater on a 2.5, which is like not even a size that's in my interchangeable needle set. I had to go buy a set of needle tips for this because nobody should ever have to do anything this small. But I want to say, in the spirit of trying new things, I do think, you know, if you make a garment at a really fine gauge, a really tight gauge, it is gonna last longer, right? And this is a pretty fine strand of yarn. This is a yarn that is going to bloom once I wash it, but it is still pretty fine. And I think knitting it at this tight of a gauge will be an interesting, it'll be interesting because I have knit with this type of yarn, this brand of yarn in the same weight, you know, at a much looser gauge, like on a size 5 needle. So that was, I think, 24 stitches every 4 inches, and this is 28, or maybe 26. That's not really that different, but it is like, no, 28. Okay, I'm not certain, but it is a tighter gauge than what I've ever done other than like for socks. So kind of difficult, to be frank. And then this one, of course, being a very loose gauge, and I couldn't even get that gauge. Like it was something insane, like 13 or 14 stitches over 4 inches. And I was like, should I just get like 2 PVC pipes and start wrapping my yarn around that? Because it's not gonna happen, okay? It's not gonna happen. And yeah, so I'm dealing with a little bit of pain, and I'm trying to be cool about it, but I can see myself needing to take more breaks from this. And I'm hoping that my new cast on doesn't also need me to take breaks from it, because that would be really unfortunate. After I knew that I wasn't going to meet my goal of working on both of these tandem where it's like I did this and then I did that. I decided to just go ahead and finish this one because I wanted to cast on my birthday for the other project, and I wanted to be done with at least one thing by my birthday. And I thought if I can finish the body of the pearl sweater by then, that'll be good. Well, that didn't happen either, but I'm so close. It's okay. I cast on another sweater, and I've just done a few rows of it. Let me just quickly go over details of this. So like I said, this is the pattern called Pearl. It's by Sanne Fjalland Knit-Wear. I knit this in Holst Garn Tides in the colorway Pecan. So that is a wool silk blend. I don't know what kind of wool it is. I'm guessing Shetland merino because that's kind of what their Holst Super Soft is. It's a Shetland merino lamb's wool blend, so I'm guessing they use the same wool and they just mix it with silk here. I have a loose stitch. Anyway, so yeah, so it's that's what that is. The next pattern is called Niji, which is Japanese for rainbow. It's by Shimizu, who's a designer she does a lot of stuff that I really think is cute. I always hesitate with it because sometimes I think what draws me to a design is the styling, and the styling of her photos is always really good. And so I worry that it's like, you know, in the same way that like Andrea Mowry's always standing in the woods, and so I want to be standing in the woods. She always looks like she's gonna go for a hike and have a great time, so I'm really drawn to her patterns, and I have to pull back and go, do I like this pattern, or do I like the way she's sort of presented it, right? And then yeah, like this is the same thing where it's like, okay, this is like a very different looking person with like a very different aesthetic. Sorry, there was something outside distracting me. And I just want to be sure that this is really like something I like. But this garment, I knew I was gonna like it from day one. So I'm knitting the Niji sweater in the yarn Gilliat by Rerum Natura. I know I can't pronounce things in French, so please forgive me. Confiture de Rose. Rosa? I don't know. I think of it like rose jelly or something. A confit of rose. I don't know what I'm saying. It's this really nice color. In my mind, it's like magenta, maybe fuchsia. It's really pretty because the yarn that is like the base of it has some dark gray fibers, and so you have this like beautiful dimensional light and dark going on. Like maybe you can see how there's like a dark splotch right there, you know, like that's like one of the more like obvious spots, but it has this like dimensional warm like color to it. I don't know, but I mean, not like warm in the sense of warm toned. It's definitely a cool tone, pink, purple, magenta, fuchsia, whatever. And I think it's gonna look great. So this is what I've done so far. Very little. It is just a cast on, but this detail around the raglan is kind of what drew me to this pattern. It's obviously like a simple like ribbing, but it starts at the shoulder, or it starts here, and then it goes, and then it wraps around and like seems to connect under the arm in a way that I'm curious to see what that like looks like construction wise, because it just looks very cool in all the patterns, or all the pattern pictures. So like I said, I'm knitting this on size 9 needles. It is also not the gauge that's recommended in the pattern because I could not get 13.5 stitches over 4 inches without hurting myself. So I'm actually knitting a few sizes up. This pattern is designed so that you would make a size that had, I think, 7 to 11 inches of ease. There's no way. I don't need 7 to 11 inches of ease. I think if I have 4 inches of ease in a project, I'm pretty happy. Like, to me, that's a baggy sweater. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm not very tall. And so when I have something that's like too big, like too wide, I do tend to look like I'm swimming in it, and it's not the aesthetic that I want. So I like things to fit kind of true to size. Maybe, you know, I think 2 inches of ease is always nice. 4 inches of ease is kind of pushing it, and then anything beyond that, it's just gonna look kind of weird. So I am knitting the size 4, which would land at a quite oversized garment if I was getting the gauge, but I'm not getting the gauge. I'm getting my gauge. And so I did the math to just see, like, should I do a size 4 or 5? Because I wanted, you know, it was sort of like I could do either one, but I think the other thing is I gauge swatched kind of, but I didn't block my swatch. So I know that it could grow a little bit. So I was like, if I was between 4 and 5 with my gauge, knowing it could grow a little, I'll go down, right? So doing the 4. I hope that all made sense. I think that's kind of just how I handle that situation, where I'm like, I'm not going to torture myself to get a gauge that's going to be physically uncomfortable. I'll just see what, you know, what size I should be knitting instead. So in case you're curious how I did that, let me just explain to you how I did that. So when you get a gauge from a pattern, right, it'll tell you this pattern is knit at 13.5 stitches over 4 inches. That's your stitch gauge, right? I'm not really looking at row gauge because I can mess with that later. Like, that's easier to modify. You can kind of eyeball it, really. I look at stitch gauge and I go, okay, so 13.5 over 4 inches. Divide that by 4 to figure out how many it is per actual inch. So that is 3.375 stitches per inch. So 3 and less than a half, right? A little more than 3 1/4, a little less than 3 1/2. I was getting 16 stitches per 4 inches on my gauge swatch, and that was kind of the same whether I was knitting flat or in the round. Although in the round, I found that my stitches might be a little tighter, or they might relax a little in comparison. It's never exactly the same, and it's never consistently bigger or smaller, but they're close enough. It's not usually visibly different. So I take that 16 divided by 4 and I go, okay, I'm actually getting 4 stitches for every inch. So if I know that I want it to be about 45 inches around, right? Because that's from my upper bust, that's 4 more inches of ease. So you know, measured right under the armpits, 41 inches. So if I add 4 inches to that for a loose oversized sweater, I get 45 inches. So I go, okay, so what is 45 times 4? Because that's how many stitches it will take to make each inch. So then that gives me a number. And then I go down in the pattern and I look at the final stitch count for the body circumference. And I go, which one of these sizes has a number that is closest to that? And that's where I was like, okay, so my number of stitches, the 45 times 4, I can't do that math that quick, but I think it's like 180, something like that. The closest in size to that is I'm right between size 4 and size 5, whatever the stitch counts were for those two sizes. So then I go, okay, let's assume it grows a little. I'd rather go down a size. I also went and I looked at what the stitch count was for the sleeve, because a lot of patterns, especially raglans, can be tricky, right? Because not everyone has the same ratio of how big your bicep is compared to how big your body is. And so you want to make sure that you're getting that correct too. And it's pretty easy to change the rate of increase on a raglan if you know what you're aiming for. So I actually needed to go up a little in size for my arms. So I'm going to be adding 4 stitches, which adds 1 more inch to whatever's in the pattern for that. And the way I'm going to do that is, you know, in most raglan patterns, you have a row where you increase, and then you have a row where you don't increase, and then you have a row where you increase and a row where you don't increase. So on one of those don't increase rows, I'm actually going to increase, but only on the sleeves. Does that make sense? So then that gives me a little more room in the sleeves, but I'm not making a bigger sweater overall. Like the body of it won't be bigger. It'll be what the pattern says it should be. So I hope that makes sense. That's just my kind of route for doing the math. I'm not worried about getting something that is exactly 45 inches either. If it ends up being 46 inches, I'll live with it, you know. If it ends up being 44, it'll still look nice. You know, I do think the Ranunculus came out a little smaller, but then again, I haven't blocked it. And it's still comfortable, and I still like how it fits. And I think, honestly, like when it's really cold in winter, I'm gonna like that it fits, you know, pretty close, pretty snug. Cause that, you know, that's when you really need like wool. So I'm gonna make this Niji sweater. When it comes to row gauge, I'm gonna keep an eye on it as I'm doing these raglan increases. Is the yoke going to be too long? Now, my row gauge tends to be kind of the same for like a worsted weight yarn, whether I'm using like a size 7, 8, or 9 needle. Maybe like it sort of levels up at like the 9, so the 9, 10 maybe is about the same. So I'm just gonna keep an eye on it. And because what I don't want, and what happens sometimes with raglans, is you have these really low armpits, and then your sweater has these like really deep sleeves that you know, start like down at your waist. Like here's the bottom of the sleeve, and then when you go to like put a coat on over it, it's just really awkward because you're like basically hitching up your whole sweater. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just gonna kind of keep an eye on it, and if I need to fiddle around with the increased rows and non-increased rows on the raglan, like I can do that, right? Like I can make it grow faster by eliminating those rows where you don't increase, or I can make it grow slower by adding in more of them. So that's my plan for the Niji. I think I'm gonna try to continue to toggle between my size 1.5 needle pattern and my size 9 needle pattern, and hopefully not experience a lot of pain. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, I'm back. My battery was low, had to go charge it up. So I wanted to end this episode just telling you about my trip to Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, which is a fiber festival that happens in Jefferson County, Wisconsin every year. Similar to YarnCon in Chicago, I've made it part of my annual routine. And these two events are a really nice foil to each other because YarnCon is very focused on hand-dyed yarn, independent makers, trendy stuff, a lot of yarn related accessories, and then Sheep and Wool is much more of that kind of like rustic farm to you know, farm to store kind of yarn. I was gonna say farm to table, but that's food. And it's just like more, you know, it's at a fairgrounds, and it's just a different vibe. So I really like going to both of these two events. I'm not sure if I made it to Sheep and Wool last year. I can't recall. And I know that this year it was like a little chaotic getting there because I had a work event in the morning. So it was a Saturday morning. I had to go table for my nonprofit at a local cafe. We're going to be like receiving a % of their profits for the month or whatever. So because we were featured, we were tabling, and so I did that like early Saturday morning, which means that I really smelled like breakfast foods, which is going to be relevant later. But that yeah, it's that cafe is wonderful, but they have very poor ventilation, so I didn't smell so great. And then I had to drop my spouse off for their company picnic, which was held at a like a park here that's like part of this larger complex of, there's like a beer garden and a botanical garden and all this stuff, and it's kind of like hard to find things because it's such a large property. So we were driving around a while, but then I went out to Sheep and Wool. So I drove out there, I met up with some friends, got to meet 2 YouTubers that I admire, or, you know, kind of like knitting influencer people. And I made some purchases. So first, we were having lunch, and Christopher from Flannel and Pearls was walking by, and we just said, "Hey, it's you, you know, hello." I haven't watched all his videos. I couldn't remember his first name, and so I had to ask him, and I felt kind of dumb because I was like, I recognize you, but like I don't actually know your real name, I just know your handle. But he was really nice and like genuine and kind, just a lovely human being. I really enjoyed talking to him, and one of my friends is thinking about getting into making YouTube videos, and I think if she does it, she's gonna want to like really do like a more professional kind of content than what I do. So I think, you know, he gave some good advice about that, about what kind of equipment, and, you know, all that kind of stuff about like, you know, what would you tell basically someone who is thinking about it? And we had a great conversation. And then our other friend came up and was talking about some like braids of fiber she had just bought. So then they got in a conversation about spinning, and it was just really fun. He's a really down-to-earth person, and it was fun meeting him. And then later I got to meet Amy Beth from the Fat Squirrel Speaks podcast, probably my #1 podcast at this time. I watch it, you know, regularly. Like as soon as a video comes out, I'm like, all right, this weekend I'm gonna watch it. I just think she's really delightful and funny and down to earth and relatable in a lot of ways. But I can't tell, I think maybe I kind of weirded her out because I had brought her an apple from my apple tree, and then I think I was like a little too effusive, combined with I wanted to take a selfie together, and then I probably just smelled like smoky breakfast foods from having been in that cafe. So that was kind of a weird, I mean, she was really kind. She was really lovely, just like down to earth, asked me what I bought, you know, a good, gracious celebrity. But I think I was like a little awkward. But anyways, it was a long day, and I did have a lot of fun that day. So I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I purchased. So the #1 thing that I always know I'm going to get when I go there, ironically, is soap. There's this brand of soap. This is Floppy Ear Farm, and they just make really nice goat milk soap. This one's pumpkin spice. I got a rosemary mint. This is like also how I set myself up for winter, just like one of the things I do, just like you might put out seasonal decor. I buy a series of soaps that I'm like, every month I get to have a new one, right? It's gonna smell great. And this is blackberry sage. So God, that smells so good. So I love having like the rosemary mint around Christmas time. So this will be my December, and then blackberry sage in November, pumpkin spice obviously October. And then I have another one that is, I think, like an apple cinnamon something, cidery kind of fragrance that I've been using, and the soap is so soft, like your skin will feel so good when you use it. So yeah, I always have to go and get soap. That's like one of the things I look forward to. I don't need a ton of yarn, so I was looking at other things, and I got this pair of alpaca gloves. These are, you know, just your standard fingerless gloves. I have a couple pairs of fingerless gloves that I got. They're not alpaca, but they're, I don't know what they are. They're just useful to have because it gets really cold here in winter, and you have different seasons of gloves. I also bought some alpaca mittens that are like really hardcore. I mean, it's a very, like, obviously machine knit gauge, and then the inside has this like lining that is, I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if the inside was like at least partially synthetic, but it's like solid, and it's like a double layer of knitting plus that lining. So periodically in the winter here, not always, but you get these like real cold temperatures, and I love to go for a walk outside when it's really cold, but you have to be careful that you bundle up appropriately. And one of the worst things is just like a lot of hand knitted stuff has, you know, you can't knit as fine as a machine, so you get like wind cutting through it. So hand knitted mittens don't always do the job, I guess. For me anyway, I did not grow up in a cold climate, and so even though I feel like I'm adjusting to it, I fully am like, don't I think have the genetic profile to like handle this cold without investing in some pretty heavy duty cold weather gear. But I'm hoping that, you know, just having this will enable me to like get outside more. And I also like to take the city bus a lot more in the winter because I do not want to drive on the roads when they're icy and there's like slushy snow everywhere and you can't see like potholes and stuff, and it's just like crazy and chaotic, and I don't really want to have to drive in that weather if I don't have to. So like standing at the bus stop, like these are going to be major lifesavers. And then let's see, I did buy one sweater quantity of yarn, and it's just like a little bit of a story. So Utopia Fiber Shop has this beautiful color called Balsam Heather of their Ridge Fingering, which is a fingering weight tweed. I would say it's like fingering to sport, you know. It's a rustic yarn. This is 100% Midwest wool made from Tarhi, Rambouillet, Merino, and CVM Rommeldale, which CVM means California Variegated Mutant, which I think is hilarious. Especially because I'm from California, so I could call myself that. What I loved about this right away is that it reminded me of this color of Brooklyn Tweed Loft. So you can see these are two very similar colors. So this is the color Button Jar by Brooklyn Tweed. I only managed to get one hank of this from my local yarn shop. Brooklyn Tweed has since, you know, shut down their yarn operation, which is really heartbreaking. I mean, just to me, like when I first started knitting, this was the first like rustic yarn that I was aware of, and it was kind of at its like peak, the beginning of its like peak popularity when I became aware of it. And so You know, I've always really liked these colors. I don't usually just buy yarn just because I like it, you know. I usually wait until I have like a plan for it. So a lot of Brooklyn tweed yarn, I didn't have plans for it and just like waited and waited. So when I found out they were closing down, I did buy a couple sweater quantities, but all I could get was one of this. However, at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival, Utopia had this one. And I just, you know, I mean, they're very, very similar, right? Like if you liked this, chances are you're gonna like this. And I bought all that they had. They had 7 skeins of this. Each one is 200 yards. So I have 1,400 yards of a fingering to sport weight. And I thought, well, that'll definitely be enough for a sweater. And then I was, you know, looking around at the Sheep and Wool Festival, and there was a booth that had vintage buttons, and I purchased these. I was so impressed that there were so many of them because, you know, a lot of times buttons come in like packs of 4, 6, maybe 8, but like this is 10. So I was like, heck yeah. And it didn't even occur to me until I got home that these go together, right? And so I immediately thought, okay, cardigan. I've been wanting to make Isolde Teague's pattern, the Stockbridge cardigan, for a while. It's just a very simple standard cardigan, but what I like about it is it has like a fairly small neck hole. It buttons up pretty high. So it feels like something that you could wear all the way buttoned up, layered with, you know, like layered on a cold day, right? But it's also a cardigan, so of course you can wear it on a warmer day. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to knit it at the gauge that's recommended because I don't think I have the yardage for that. This store, Utopia, is several hours of driving away from home for me. I honestly can't imagine driving 4 hours to buy a couple hanks of yarn. But if I order it online, I know I called the store, they don't have this dye lot anymore. So I could order it online and then hope that it's the right color. Or I can just say, this is the yardage I have, 1,400 yards. How do I make that work? So, you know, I've been fiddling around with doing patterns at a different gauge lately, and I think I can make it work. Because I think what I would need for that pattern at the gauge that's recommended is like 1,600 or something, 1,650 yards, and I have 1,400. So honestly, 200 yards is, I mean, that's not nothing, right? Like if you were going to do it at the same gauge, you would be looking at, it's a cropped cardigan, it's got 3/4 sleeves, and I'm still okay with doing 3/4 sleeves, I think. But I definitely am sort of in love with this combo and feel like now it's like meant to be. So I'll be making a cardigan out of that. We'll see if I go with the Stockbridge pattern or if I find another pattern. But I think I want to do one that is knit flat because I just don't want to deal with steeks this time around. So that was all I got for me. I got something for my spouse, which I think I've talked about before. She's a gardener, and much more than I am, really. And I got this product called Woolits. And this is a wool pellet soil amendment. I thought this was super cool. I got this little card that has information, so I'll just kind of share some of this with you because this is really cool. This product won like a scientific innovation award for Wisconsin or something, so very cool. Basically, wool has more nitrogen than manure, but it won't burn your plants, so that's a point in its favor. this will hold 30 times its weight in moisture, so like it conserves water in the same way that like a terracotta pot will absorb water and then release it back into your plant. Wool will do that, wool pellets. It has macro and micronutrients that will improve soil health, and then because the fiber breaks down slowly, it will aerate the soil. You can reduce your carbon footprint by switching from peat to wool. Save the peat bags for carbon sequestration and use wool instead. The planet will thank you for it. I'm not really sure what that means, because I don't know. I guess because you use those peat pots. Okay, maybe that's what they're talking about. But Woolits is a 2-woman company dedicated to finding solutions for climate change as well as the wool industry. They divert waste wool from the waste stream. They heat and pelletize it, repurposing it into woolits, which is wool pellets for horticultural use. So this is sustainable, obviously, because sheep need to be shorn every year. And then they were saying that they take like used wool or like scraps from mills and like the wool that you know, when they do the skirting process and they're like separating out, this will become yarn, this will become something else, and then this is all the like bits that are kind of like full of dung, maybe from the less, you know, clean parts of the sheep. That stuff can actually still become woolits. So I'm very excited to see what this product does. I get to just sort of be along for the ride and see what it looks like. But yeah, it's this 1 pound bag of pellets. I guess there are peat pellets that it's like replacing. I would show you what they look like, but I don't want to open it up because it's sealed, and I think, you know, it's not mine to open. So this, I think I paid about $15 or $20 for this, but they say that you only use like 1/3 or 1/2 cup of this per gallon of soil. Or for like a 6-inch potted plant, you would use a tablespoon. So you're not, I mean, this right here will end up being, you know, several gallons of soil. So this could be like one really big pot. My wife uses grow bags a lot, so I bet that they will try it out in like those grow bags, which hold anywhere from, I think, like 6 to 10 gallons of soil. And then, you know, you plant stuff in it, and it's sort of like it's a soft-sided container, basically. So yeah, that was the last thing I bought. Thank you so much for watching and for being here. I love to see your comments. Thank you to everyone who said nice things about me recording a video last time. It was really encouraging to see that. So I hope you're having I want to say a good day. I hope you're having a good week and surviving fascism. I hope you are finding ways to find joy in the midst of, you know, all of it. And I hope that where you are is safe and that you feel surrounded by people who have your back. All right, bye.